Okay, so hyperinflation, very fast inflation. Price level doubles in 3 years or less. We've had lots of cases of hyperinflation through time. So Germany post-World War I, Germany again post-World War II, lots of other countries around the world wars. In addition to some other more contemporary ones, even in history, go back to the French Revolution, there was inflation along that period of time. And these played important roles in history. So what causes these hyperinflations? Well, we know from the quantity theory of money, it's precisely from the money supply growing too fast, faster than real GDP is growing. So money supply growing too fast. Now, what's interesting about that is, especially in countries that have fiat money, which is where these happen, we can control how quickly the money supply grows. Right? So the government, in effect, is the one that gives fiat money its value. And so why would we allow that much money to be created when it causes such rapid inflation? The answer is the following. So governments, when they run a budget deficit, right? So they spend more than they take in taxes. So how can the government spend more money than they get in taxes? Well, the same way that you would be able to spend more money than you take in an income, which is to borrow. So you would probably put it on your credit card or take out a student loan. The government issues bonds or government bonds to pay for its deficit. So the government borrows. And the larger and larger deficits get, the more and more governments have to borrow. Eventually, you're borrowing just to pay off the old loans. Right? So you have to pay interest on the borrowing that the government engages in, etc. So when governments spend more than they take in taxes, and the deficit gets bigger and bigger, the amount of borrowing increases, and if this goes on for long enough, the government is going to be unable to repay their loans. Right? There's no way that, when the amount of debt that I owe is in excess of total GDP, I have no way of paying that off. Absolutely no way that I can pay it off. So what's the government going to do in that situation? I owe some money on my debt. I don't have sufficient tax revenue to pay this off anymore. What do I do? The answer is I can, what we say, monetize the debt. And what that means is I'm going to print money or create fiat currency to pay off the debt. Now, you might say, wait a minute, they can't do that. Can the government just print money to pay off its loans? And the answer is yes, right? If I have fiat currency, the government declares by fiat that this $20 bill is worth $20. So all I have to do is print off enough $20 bills to pay off the debt. That's fine. The debt is settled in that case, right? I've paid off the debt. The downside to that is what we see here with hyperinflation. By printing that much money, I cause the money supply to grow very, very quickly. If I have to increase the money supply by 100%, I know via the quantity theory of money, I'm going to get inflation of 100%, or the price level is going to double. And so we can kind of see the consequences of engaging in that type of activity. So this is something that will be of some concern here coming up with the coronavirus crisis, as governments have been forced to run increasingly large budget deficits in order to pay for all of the things that they've been doing. So when our government, for example, institutes this $2.2 trillion stimulus spending, they paid for that with a deficit, which implies they're taking on more debt. So if governments continued to do that, eventually they wouldn't have enough funds to repay the debt they've issued, and their only choice would be to monetize the debt, or effectively collected via inflation. So sometimes you'll hear this referred to as the inflation tax, which is basically the government is taxing those of us that hold money in, let's say, our checking accounts. Because with the inflation, the value in our checking accounts now buys me fewer pizzas than it did before. So it's kind of a fun topic to think about this stuff, and the quantity theory of money is very informative. Now, what I'd like you to do is to go through this question on Canvas. It kind of walks us through this quantity theory of money and gives us a couple of examples of hyperinflation. So I want you to spend some time. It takes you through a case of Zimbabwe. Kind of read about it and learn something about these cases because they're very interesting. And these will be very relevant in our contemporary economies where we're likely to see some of these issues pop up over the next couple of years.